Welcome to the Sales Mindset Podcast. My name is Dennis D. Pasquale, Dr. Dennis D.
My name is Sam Hendrickson.
I'm Brian Gorgeous.
All right, and so for today we're going to talk about some effective strategies for objection handling.
Run. No. So, I know this is not new for you guys, but my biggest advice has always been to be excited about objections. In some respects, if you're getting objections, chances are they're still interested in making a purchase.
Yeah.
So the objection handling framework that I teach both in the sales training course and in class is based off of Vector Marketing Guru. And that, for the audience that might not be aware of that name, is the Cutco Knives company. And so the thing is it's not really proprietary. I've seen the models that they used using different words in different areas. So the first part is to at least listen. And experienced salespeople might have problems with this because if they hear an objection that they've heard before, they might interrupt it and be like, "Oh, I know what you're going to say. It's okay, blah, 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 blah." Which, of course, devalues the customer. The customer is going to feel like they were talked over, like they were not important, could be considered condescending. The next is to just acknowledge it. And it's just take a second and be like, okay, so this is something that bothers you. And you're restating it, which gives you a chance to actually think about whatever your next question is going to be. Because you don't want to be thinking about your question while they're stating the actual objection. Right? And so now you just go into a discovery. You just go into explore what the objection is, why it's there, where it's coming from. But you've got to practice empathy and not compassion. A lot of people confuse empathy and compassion. But you've got to practice empathy in wanting to understand where the customer is coming from with that particular objection. So if we're talking price objection is one of the more common ones. You want to look and understand as to why they don't think your product is worth whatever it is that you happen to be selling it for. So what you should think about is objections are about you. There's something that you did not do to underscore whatever is causing that particular objection. So you want to explore where that objection is coming from so that you can properly respond to it. And of course, that's that last part. So the Guru method is LAER, and I add a little confirmation at the end. So is, have I handled your objection? The other thing is to pull objections out. So when it comes to having conversations and actively listening, you're looking for these hesitations. You're listening for tone. The words we say is only about 7% of what we're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And the rest is tonality and body language. Think about it like this. If someone's angry and they said, "I don't like you," that doesn't communicate anger, right? But if someone came out and was like, "I don't like you," like that is obvious anger. And you need the tone and you need the body language to communicate that. So as you're actively listening in your conversations, and again, we're going back to listen, you need to listen for those hesitations and say, "Look, I just presented this. You don't seem really excited about it. Is there something that you don't like about this product?" Some people might, out of politeness, feel that they don't want to bring any of that stuff up. So what it really comes down to, all of that is to say, is that you want to make it about the customer. And you want to make sure that the customer is 100% bought into it. So if they're not sounding at least somewhat excited about the product, about the purchase, about what that product is going to do for them, then you want to make sure that you're getting to that root of it. And really, you want to understand where the customer is coming from. It is not about you. It is about them.
Yeah. And people who don't have experience in sales might have a different idea of what it would look like, but you're going to be dealing with objections almost every time you're making a sale. And if you're not, you're probably not going to get a sale because that person's probably just not interested.
They're fully checked out.
Yeah, exactly. They're just waiting for a moment to either hang up on you if you're on a call or, just leave the meeting. So, and if you're not getting those objections where they're not stating them, like you said, you've really got to be looking at, okay, either they are checked out or I've got to try to pull these objections out of them. Probably as quickly as possible.
Yeah, sooner the better.
Yeah. And But I mean, whenever someone is actually talking and stating their objections, you should pretty much be pretty excited about it, and if you're nervous about dealing with it, that's obviously something you're not going to be excited about, but like we said, with practice, you get better.
Yeah.
And those objections do show, hey, I'm ready to buy, but this is one thing, here's this that's holding me back, okay? You just, say I'm an archer, okay, you just gave me a target. If I can hit that target, all right, that's one down. All right.
Yeah.
Anything else? Another one? Okay. Now do I have your sale?
Yeah, lob it up. The way that you say that, like almost like a trial close or a trial sale. So something like almost an exact phrase that I said on almost every tour when I was a leasing agent, like leasing apartments out. This probably wouldn't be. It's like a very direct for a more complicated sale, unless you're just getting no objections at all from them. But I would always say near the end of a tour, if I felt like there was something missing or they weren't saying something or it was wrapping up, I would say, is there anything stopping you from moving forward today? Like specifically putting a timeline on it as well. Like, is there anything stopping you today? That way, like it pulls the immediacy up to the surface. Like, oh shoot, you're asking me to make a decision right now. I'm actually really worried about the price of this, or I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that.
So something you said, if there's no objections, you're not selling.
Yeah.
You're just taking an order.
Yeah.
So you want to be careful. Obviously, you want to sell more if there's a possibility. Now, apartment leasing's probably a little bit different. Someone may have done their homework beforehand and know what they want.
It's a very short-term cycle, too.
Right. So, and even for your sales training, if someone's all bought into it, let me know so I can raise my prices. I'm only half kidding. But there's a book out there that I don't remember the name of the book offhand, but it's basically Start with No is negotiation. Go for no, I think, and it's basically sell until you get that no, and then you've reached the boundary of it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe completely in that because sometimes you can oversell something and you can have someone buy more than what they need. But at the same time, if you're not getting objections, is it because they're just pushing you through and they're going to ghost you eventually, or is it because you could have sold them a little bit more, or maybe they need a little bit more? So that's just a thought there that I had on that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention is the 3 sales approach that I often use. What are they actually objecting to? Are they objecting to your company? Are they objecting to the product? Or are they objecting to you? And that last one is a tricky one for a lot of people. As a salesperson, you want to make sure that they don't have any objections to you, which can be hard if they have objections which are not rooted in rational thoughts. Yeah. You guys remember I did that to you in class where, in the one sales simulation, it's like, I don't like how you're dressed. You look too young, like you're going to be able to handle the business. Yeah. So when you start to trifurcate, I don't know if that's the right word. Bifurcate's a word, but I don't know if trifurcate is. But split it up and say, what are they actually objecting to, and how can I handle that?
Yeah, that objection threw me off a lot. I got the one like, and these are sales simulations, and the guys just said, oh, how old are you? And so I was with my partner, and I just made up our ages on the spot. I was like, oh, I'm 24, he's 25, whatever. Like, we're younger. And then he just like, oh, that's way too young. I was like, oh. I was ready for that. I was like, oh, was I supposed to say something else?
Yeah.
And then we responded to it pretty well, but that was a different circumstance, and those objections like more personable. Definitely got to get to the root cause. So then it was like, started to ask questions like, okay, well, what's the issue with age there? And then, in the simulation, he's obviously like, oh, well, I don't think you have much experience and like expertise in this area, and I don't know, you can't take it personally and then just figure out what the actual issues are, because then it might not even apply to yourself. Maybe it does, and you can find a different solution to it. I don't know what that would be. It would apply to that certain situation.
I was going to say, people will object to immutable things. Your age, baldness, shortness, and they may not articulate it.
Yeah.
There are still racists out there that are going to object because someone's black. There's still sexists out there that will object because someone's a woman. These days, apparently, there will be people who object because you're a white male. So how do you handle those objections and how do you navigate those objections is usually the trick. But most people are inherently selfish. They care about their money. And the idea here is when you're selling them something, you should be saving them some money or some headache or something like that. So if you can make it about them, you can get that focus off of you if that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually kind of reminds me of kind of like two concepts that I think about sometimes, where I think the most frequent objection I've ever received is it's too expensive, or it's out of my price range, or it's out of my budget. And I have an associated expression that's price is almost never a true objection. It's they don't see the value for the price. They'll always say it's too expensive or I can't spend that type of money, but you never would have been at the table if that were true. It's that you don't see the value of my product at this price. So instead of responding with I could lower the price or our prices are hard and firm, sorry, it's well why do you think it's not worth that amount, or what do you think it's worth then? And ask them and try to draw out what it is that they're missing from the product, and say, well, is there anything that the product is missing that I'm not understanding? Pulling out specific value related objections instead of hitting that wall of a price objection, because I think it's not fabricated, because I think anybody would fall into that, where especially for like when I would going back to doing apartment tours, I'd be doing a tour and they're like, yeah, it's just too expensive for us. I'm like, but you went on the tour. You knew how much it was before you came here. So there was a small part of you at least that thought this could be a reasonable price to pay. So why have you changed your mind on that?
Right.
And the other concept is kind of standing your ground and kind of defending your own product as well, where you don't want to push through and sell to just anybody, and you also want to keep standards very clear for yourself and your product. So like you said, like somebody might not want to buy from you just because you're black, white, a woman, or however. And there was one issue that I kind of ran into where I received one of those age objections in real time, where I sat down, and I think that because we were like sophomores in college, like looked very young, he just kind of pushed us around, and I think people like to push around salespeople sometimes. And I think the last, like, it was very clear that he was like, oh, they're inexperienced, they're young. You can just tell by the questions he was asking, the things that he was saying, just being very kind of rude. And the last straw was like, we didn't have the zip code on our business card of our office. It said 2700 or whatever it was, Gainesville, Florida, and without the zip code. And he's like, what's the zip code? Like, how am I ever gonna find you guys? And I'm like, it's 32608. Like, do you have a problem with us? Like, it kind of, like I snapped a little bit, maybe more than what I should have. Like, do you have a problem with us? Like, what the hell is your problem right now? And I feel it kind of drew it out a little bit. It also put it like a certain level, because people I don't think want to be mean. I think that he kind of got like a little bit of a check to be like, oh, I am actually kind of being a dick right now. Yeah. And then we
so it worked for you.
It did in this case. It might not always work, but it kind of like eased tensions a little bit, where he said he apologized, well, like, yeah, I'm sorry, like, rough day or something. And then we actually ended up selling to him. We had a relationship with him for a while, which was good.
So something you just said there, I think, is notable. You snapped at him.
Yeah,
you lost control. So
yeah.
Another key thing is understanding emotional intelligence. You don't want to let who's ever objecting cause you to do that.
Sure.
There's always going to be a time when it happens. No one's perfect. But your emotional intelligence, your ability to resist the urge to do that's going to be critical, because you don't want the objection to also cause you fear. Someone objects, you're like, oh crap, I'm going to lose the sale. Oh no.
Yeah.
You want to avoid that feeling of panic, and so managing your emotions at the same time is going to be important. So I brought off fear, you were talking about anger, but either way, even sadness can start creeping up. Oh no, this person objects, I'm bummed already.
Yeah.
And you can self-sabotage a sale just by doing something like that.
It brings in the happiness aspect as well. When you get kind of close to a sale, you might get excited and start to drop certain standards for the product, which is kind of related to what I was trying to say before, which don't make sure before you make a sale, don't give any false interpretations as to what the product is. Where if somebody's expecting product one way and you're like, oh, absolutely, like we can do that, we can do this, we can work with you in this way, but in reality you can't provide certain elements of the service or that communication. There's something that you also have to set clear standards for out of the gate, where we were an advertising company that had to talk to people on a regular basis. We had to work closely with the client, but we can't talk every single day necessarily unless it's planned or like we schedule it. Like you can't call my cell anytime, any day and expect me to answer every time. I'm going to try my best, but come up with what makes sense for your timeline and for your product, where to make it clear, like, you won't treat us like that, or this is how you're going to pay. You're going to pay on this date and whatnot. Not in a rude way, but make sure you set the standards out of the gate. That way you don't run into even more problems down the line and get blinded by the excitement of making a sale right now.
So I remembered what I wanted to ask you. In advertising sales, how often did you get the price objection?
Every single sale.
And how did you handle it?
At first, I was a lot more flexible on the price. We were a startup and we were kind of hungry for business. And when we started taking on more clients and started having slimmer and slimmer margins and whatnot, there was a little bit of a reality check that needed to come in where I'm like, we're already really inexpensive. We're one of the least expensive advertising companies. We're probably the least expensive advertising company in town. We need to be firm. And some people wouldn't pay their invoice by a certain time. And the person that worked above me, I guess like the real adult in the room for this college, student-run advertising agency, he didn't really rear his head very much, but he would he handled the books. He'd be like, I don't want to lose Jim, like let him wait another week, and then eventually, Jim owed us $3,000, and I'm like, no, Jim is not our client anymore if he doesn't pay. Like we need to talk to him, and being a little bit more firm where we're stopping your service. But we're not going to do this unless we have like an equal balance of respect. And having those conversations be kind of challenging because it's changing the status quo, but being able to sit down with your client, and if they can't respect that, then you do need to amicably end your relationship as well.
Yep. Yep. No, firing clients there's actual research. Someone actually sat down and did the research, and they found out that sometimes you can fire clients, especially someone who's not paying their bills.
Yeah.
But even someone who is paying their bills, if they're costing you too much money on the back end to get serviced.
Yeah, that was actually one of the articles you had us read, or one of the posts. I think that my group read that one. And when we had to present like articles at the end of one of our presentations, and it's just some clients just actually cost more than more than the money you make on them.
Yeah, and one of the weird things that I found in business, and this is related to the price objection too, is that the less someone wants to spend, the more of a pain in the ass they're going to be. And so sometimes when someone's hitting you with too many price objections and trying to get you down, you need to be like, maybe this isn't going to be a good relationship for us. You have to operate efficiently.
Yeah.
And so when you take the time that you would be spending servicing this price-sensitive client and apply it to the price-insensitive clients who are more willing to spend money on you, especially if they're happy.
Yeah.
You're satisfying customers and keeping them there, and they're spending a lot of money and not abusing you. So don't be afraid to not deal with it. And it's hard as a salesperson, though, to turn away business.
Yeah. And have your own objections. Even.
Yeah.
It's a relationship and a conversation, and not just as often as they're going to have an objection, but with a reasonable frequency, you need to have your own objections ready, where you have your own standards for how you need to be treated, your team needs to be treated, how payment works, how much it costs.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that, and one of the thoughts that I had, and I think it's good that we can end on this, is when you're selling yourself, not prostitution, when you're selling yourself and you're interviewing. One of the things I always tell people is if you're going on an interview, then you want to make it a two-way sale. You want to make sure that you're not just selling yourself, but they're selling their company as well. And I think when you're dealing with sales, that you want to make sure you are bringing in the right clientele, because it can affect your brand.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the most important things, to keep up that reputation as well.
Absolutely.
What is it? I think Warren Buffett. He's the one who runs Berkshire Hathaway, right? Yeah, he said, look, we can lose, I don't care how much money we lose, we can't lose a shred of reputation.
Yeah. And with that, we'll end it, especially since one of our cameras died. But thank you for checking in with the Sales Mindset Podcast. We'll see you next time.